So for those that don't know your family's story, give us a bit of a synopsis. What phase in your life does this film take you through?
Yeah, so in the early 90s, I was about nearly 5. We were living in Australia, and my dad got a job offer. He had a very difficult thing take place in Australia where the businesses that he was running in Australia kind of went away. Got a job offer in America, and he thought it would be a good idea to move his 6 kids with another one on the way to America. And that's what we did. But as soon as we arrived in America, my dad actually lost that job. And so we're straight on the other side of the world, no friends, no family. We were sleeping on beds made out of clothes, weren't always quite sure where the next meal was going to come from, didn't have a way for our little sister to be born in a hospital, didn't have a car. I mean, the list went on and on and on. And we didn't know what else to do other than just gather around as a family and just start praying for these essential things in life. And we got to see God do some incredible things. And I've actually told that story from stage for about the last 12 years. And I've had so many people come up and say, hey, that story, you know, it's really powerful, you should write a book, we realized that there was something special about it. And the truth is, Joel and I were homeschooled, so we don't read or write very well. So we thought, let's make a movie instead. And the thesis kind of for the movie is really this. Mother Teresa says, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And our hope is that when you watch the film, that's what you'll leave with. You'll leave with, I've got something special here with my family. I'm going to invest deeper. I'm going to grow deeper into what our family can be.
Your dad was really successful, and yet it all just hit rock bottom when you came to the States.
Yep.
What were some of the lowest points for you as a family back then?
Well, I think it's what's interesting about family is we were very aware as kids that Dad was, had struggled financially and that we were poor. We knew that. I mean, when you don't have any furniture in your house and people are coming over looking around, I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on, one thing that was remarkable about, and this is essentially what the movie is about, my parents, particularly my mom, didn't really allow us to have any shame, didn't really allow us to have embarrassment. She just kind of labeled everything as this grand adventure. So you're English, we thought, how cool is it we can play cricket inside? When are you ever allowed to do that? And so that we made it into something that was kind of fun. I mean, I started mowing lawns when I was 5 years old. I look at my kids now, and they're pretty young for some of the things that they get to do, but they weren't 5, and even my older brothers, they didn't learn to mow lawns that young, but out of necessity, that's what we did. And in some cases, we took a great pride in, I may be 5, but I can mow a lawn. How cool is that? And so we turned a lot of negatives. This is what my parents did. They turned a lot of negatives into positives, and I think because of their instruction, their guidance in my life, they taught me what it means to forgive. They taught me right from wrong. They taught me to fear God. And a lot of those lessons came from struggling as a family. It wasn't necessarily as much of a struggle from the child's perspective as probably what it looked like from the outside looking in. We did have a lot of fun. It was a grand adventure.
What was that like for you, particularly that your brother is playing your dad? What was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a little bit unique because it's this weird reverse, psychology moment of I'm kind of his boss, but I'm also kind of not because he's the director and he's acting in it. But I think in regards to my job on set, it was probably more to make sure that he's doing all the things that we needed to do, because there's this weird thing of, he's playing my dad in the movie. He needs to nail that. He can't just be like, he's pretty good. He needs to be amazing. And so there were obviously conversations where you'd film a scene and it was like, man, I want to feel it more. I want to see the intensity a little bit. There's those types of things, but at the end of the day, you usually on a set, you can kind of feel when things are being executed the right way. And so there's moments to step in and make some decisions here and there, but most of the producer work is done at some level before you get on set. That's where the complications in some cases start months prior.
One of the things I love in the movie, we talk about faith and prayer, is you kept Post-it notes of things that you needed God to provide for you. Tell us a bit about what that was like and the answered prayers you saw.
Yeah, so that's one of those film liberties that we took a little bit, because we didn't actually do that as a family, put a note up there, but that's what was taking place in our prayer life. if that makes sense. We'd pray every morning for, food, and then, somebody would randomly show up with groceries. We would pray for, money for rent, and, someone would forget to collect rent. Like crazy stuff. I mean, one of the rent jokes that was funny is when we moved out of that first house that we lived in here, the owner came up and said, I think I forgot to collect rent for 4 or 5 months. And he said, hey, that's my fault, not yours, and I'm not going to ask you for the money. Just crazy. We'd have people, send us money that knew that we were struggling, and that they would just so happen to cover our bills just barely. Our little sister, she was, someone paid for her to be born in a hospital, and we still to this day don't know who paid for our little sister to be born in that hospital. Absolutely remarkable things. And one of the things I hope people take away from the film is people go, well, those miracles, God was using people. Are they really miracles if he's just using people to do certain things that the local community may have known about? And I respond to that as that's actually how God usually does miracles, is he uses people like you, and he uses people like me. And it's our job as people now to be aware of how can I be a miracle to someone else in their life and in their local community.
The movie doesn't really tell the full story of how you started for King and Country, but we see the beginnings where you're backing singers for your sister Rebecca St. James at a major audition. What was that like for you?
We didn't do the major audition right back then, but what we did do in the years coming, that's what we did. So we condense a lot. It's funny about movie making is, that tells a story about us being in America for the first year or 2 years. And what we really did is we condensed a lot of the big stories into that year or two. But yeah, we spent a lot of our childhood, singing together. Joel started at 12, actually, singing background vocals for Rebecca. I actually started singing background vocals off the stage. I wasn't even allowed to be on stage. I ran lights at the same time as singing, and doing all sorts of different things. And so, yeah, there was, reflecting back, we did some things that were very normal for us as a family. Very different for probably other people to conceive how children can do that, but you'd be amazed at what kids can do if you give them an opportunity.
At what point in your life, there's a lot of prayer and faith in the movie. At what point did you make that decision to accept Christ?
Yeah, it was actually in our second house that we lived here. The movie centers around the first house that we lived in, but we rented another home very close to where we were living. And I had gotten into some trouble for lying to my parents, and my dad had come and approached me and said, you lied to your mom, and I got in big trouble, and hey, you've got to go and apologize to your mother. And if you were to rewind back a few months prior, actually at church, we had a bunch of Sunday school leaders that asked us. They said, hey, for those of you kids here, have you guys made a decision to follow Jesus? And if you have, raise your hand. And they were very, very clearly talking about not your parents' faith, but you individually. Have you actually made a decision in your life to follow Jesus? Maybe as it's on display for your parents, but you individually. And I couldn't raise my hand. And so fast forward to that moment where I've lied to my mom and my dad, and I go and apologize to my mom and said I'm sorry. And I said to her, Mom, I know that I need Jesus in my life. I cannot myself triumph over this sin. And though it may have been a pedestrian thing, the gospel became very, very real to me in my sinful ways of lying to my parents. And so I said, Mom, I know I need to have, Jesus in my life. And she was very excited and said, hey, let's go get Dad. And I'll never forget that prayer that night. I often joke that that night I slept better than I've ever slept in my life, because there is something about when you feel the weight of the world and the weight of your sin, when it's removed, there are a few moments in your life that you'll ever have like that.
So just finally, besides the movie Unsung Hero coming out, I believe in April, what else can we look out for King and Country? What's coming?
Yeah, so April 26th, the movie Unsung Hero comes out. We also have an Inspired By project that is kind of for King and Country, doing all these remakes, a couple of originals on there that comes out the same day, actually. So you've got movie, you've got an album. Joel and I are starting to work on some new music as well. There's always things going, and if it becomes very important, obviously we'll let you all know about it. But those are the things in the short term that we're working on.
What's your website?
For kingandcountry.com. Yeah, hopefully fairly easy.
Luke, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Hey, Peter, appreciate your time, man.